Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT07, and BT07 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build some new and exciting decks with. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about the Purple Hybrids deck. So the fact that Purple Hybrids is also playing a little bit different than your traditional hybrids, just because we actually do have Tamer recursion and we do have Digimon recursion, makes them a little bit more resilient to use it than some of the other hybrid-based decks. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitamas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DemiMeramon. So DemiMeramon is still just one of the best Digitamas that we have because his ability is just generically good. So his inheritable ability states that on delete we get to draw 1 card and then discard 1 card. So this is really powerful in combination with some of our rookies and our level 4s. So that way we could try to filter through our deck and set up our trash all at the same time. And then the 5th Digitama of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Tsunomon. You don't necessarily have to run a 5th Digitama if you don't want to, and this is a flex spot for whatever Digitama you want. I just think Tsunomon has some good synergy with the deck because we are going to be playing around with discarding a little bit. So his inheritable ability of during your turn once per turn, when you trash a card from your hand by your card effects, then you get to draw 1 card, essentially replacing the card that you just discarded. And again, he's just adding to the overall consistency of the deck, which is what we want our Digitamas to be doing because of how the deck is going to be running, where we're mostly going to be utilizing our lower levels to aggress. Next, onto the level 3s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tapirmon. So Tapirmon is a really good card for his on-delete ability of allowing us to draw 1 card, allowing him to be, well, a relatively aggressive card. So we could use him to try to swing into the opponent's security, have him get deleted, and then we're going to be drawing a card for having him be deleted, and that's just really, really good because, again, it adds to the overall consistency of the deck while adding to the overall aggression of the deck. Next, I'm going to be playing 2 copies of Gazimon. So Gazimon is that tech card to try to stop some of the opponent's actions and limit what they can do because of his ability where during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by Tamer effects. So it just stops a lot of memory manipulating shenanigans, trying to force the opponent to play fair or deal with Gazimon as a threat that they have to actually remove if they want to try to play their game. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Elecmon. So Elecmon is doing a very similar job to what Tapirmon is doing, where he's just an aggressive level 3 Digimon because we want his on-delete ability to trigger. So his on-delete ability states that we get to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon, which is pretty good because it helps try to control the board in some capacity. And then the last level 3 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Bokomon. So you can't play a hybrid-based deck without Bokomon just because Bokomon is one of the best, if not the best, search tool that we have for our hybrids and our tamers. So what he's doing is he has an on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, add 1 card with hybrid in its form or 10 warriors in its traits into our hand and 1 tamer into our hand, and then place the rest onto the bottom. So he's just helping dig out basically our Digimon and our tamers, which is what the deck wants to do in the long run. And then on top of that, he has a very powerful passive ability while he's just chilling on the field, where during your turn, once per turn, when your tamer digivolves, then you get to gain 2 memory, basically making it cheaper to digivolve into your hybrids. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Eyesmon Scatter Mode. So Eismon Scatter Mode is a very good consistency tool for the deck because he's just a very easy card to use. So for being a level 4, he has a hard play cost of 4, making him very easy to play in case we don't see any of our lower levels. And on top of that, his on-delete ability that we're trying to take advantage of is allowing us to draw 3 cards and then discard 2 cards. So this is a very powerful consistency type tool just because we're seeing a lot of cards and we're helping to set up our trash very easily and consistently. And we can't be running 4 copies of Eismon Scatter Mode without running 4 copies of Eismon. Yes, this card is going to be hit into the future, but right now for BT07, he is unlimited and we could run him at full capacity. And we want to run him at full capacity because he's a very powerful card to play in combination with Eismon Scatter Mode. So what this card is doing is when this card is discarded from our hand by a card effect, if we have an Eismon Scatter Mode in our trash, then we get to play this card for free. So that's just already really powerful because Eismon Scatter Mode's level of looting is just very, very powerful because we're already seeing lots of cards and we could already discard lots of cards. Not to mention, in combination with DemiMeramon, we could see more cards and potentially put more cards into our trash to help be able to play our Eyesmon. So he's already very good for that ability alone, on top of the fact that during your turn, for each Eyesmon scatter mode in our trash, this Digimon gains plus 2000 DP, even makes him a very aggressive and very powerful level 4 Digimon to be playing around with. So all of that combined just makes Eyesmon a very powerful Digimon to be running, because free value is good value on top of a big beater. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Loweemon. So we are a hybrid-based deck, so we do have to play some hybrids, and Loweemon is just going to be acting as that Lobomon, where we just get to Digivolve him on top of a Tamer for 2, or we could just Digivolve him on top of one of our level 3s for 2. So he's just a very basic hybrid for us to be playing, but because he's a hybrid and one of the only hybrids purple has, we kind of have to play him, and he's not really bad of a card to be playing. But the main level 4 hybrid that we want to be using is going to be 4 copies of KaiserLeomon. So KaiserLeomon is that hybrid where we just have lots of different ways on how we could Digivolve him, and those difference in Digivolution methods just make the card extra playable. So we could Digivolve him for 3 off of a level 3, for 1 off of a level 4, or for 2 on top of a Tamer. And that's just really good because, again, the flexibility on how we could evolve him means that we could assess the situation that we're in and utilize him to his utmost potential. And then on top of that, he has a very powerful when Digivolving ability, where if this Digimon has a card with hybrid in its form, or Koichi in its Digivolution source, then this Digimon gains the retaliation ability, so that way we could use him to try to attack into the opponent's Digimon to try to delete their Digimon that way. So this is already looking to be a very powerful card for the deck to be using, just because we also do have ways to reuse this card, and we do have ways to also reuse our Tamers. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running only 4 copies of Rhihimon. So Rhihimon is a solid card to be using just because of all of that hybrid-based synergies, because he's going to be the level 5 hybrid of the deck. And then on top of that, he does have that style of play where we could Digivolve him for 3 on top of a level 4, or if we have a Digimon with a Tamer in its Digivolution source, then we could Digivolve him for essentially 1. And that just allows us to easily play him and try to use him to climb into our higher stages if we want to. But we don't necessarily want to try to climb our stages all that often, because he has a really nice on-delete ability, where if a card with hybrid in its form is in this card's Digivolution source, then we get to play 1 Tamer from our trash for free. So this is one of the cards that's allowing us to reuse our Tamers, so that way we could reuse our hybrids, so that way we could try to keep up the aggression with our mid to low level Digimon. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm only going to be running 3 copies of Cherubimon. So Cherubimon is a really decent card for this deck to be playing around with, just because, well, he does have Tamer interaction, and he does have some decent interaction with our level 3s. So his when Digivolving ability allows us to play a purple Tamer from our trash for free, and then for each Tamer we have in play, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So this is basically the pseudo Shine Greymon of the deck, where he's just allowing us to play our Tamers more efficiently, and on top of that, he is also allowing us to try to control the opponent's field all at the same time, just for literally using our Tamers. And then on top of that, he has a very nice on-delete ability, where for each Tamer we have in play, we get to play 1 level 3 or lower Digimon from our trash for free. So this is just level 3 Digimon, and it's not even stating that we don't get their on-play abilities, so that way we actually could utilize their on-play abilities, regardless of what color they are, making Cherubimon a very powerful level 6 to be playing around with this deck, just because we're actually trying to use our level 3s and our level 4s to be able to easily aggress onto the opponent while using our Tamers as essentially extra level 3s to try to use for our hybrids. And then as far as the level 7 of the deck goes, I'm only going to be running 1 copy of Tsunomon. So Tsunomon is a pretty decent card to play in virtually any hybrid-based deck, and this deck is no exception. So what this card is doing is we could Digivolve him on top of Cherubimon if we really wanted to, but more often than not, we're actually going to want to Digivolve him on top of one of our Tamers, because he has this nice ability that actually allows us to do so, by placing 10 Tamers and or cards with hybrid in their form from our hand or trash to the bottom of our deck, to be able to Digivolve on top of a Tamer as if that Tamer was a level 6 Digimon. So this is really powerful, especially in this deck, since we want to try to fill up our trash as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can, and this card is just basically resetting our deck, so then we could try to continue some of the aggression that we have. And then on top of that, Tsunomon is already a very powerful card on his own, just because he has security attack +2 to try to punch the opponent's security relatively hard, and a nice when Digivolving ability to be able to delete one of the opponent's Digimon, adding some extra control type elements into the deck. So Tsunomon is just a very solid level 7 for this deck to be running as a whole. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Calling from the Darkness. So Calling from the Darkness is going to be our sack outlet to try to trigger our on-delete abilities when we really need them to trigger. So what this card is doing is for the low cost of 1, it has the main ability where we get to delete one of our Digimon, and then we get to return 2 purple Digimon from our trash to our hand. So this is very powerful because if we actually don't have any Digimon in play and we're able to use this card, then we don't have to sacrifice that Digimon, and we could still return the 2 Digimon from our trash back to our hand. Most of the time, again, we're just using this card to actually act as that sack outlet to trigger their on-delete abilities and to get whatever we need back into our hand to allow us to reuse our Digimon, making it a very powerful card just because we have very easy ways to be able to play a lot of our Digimon. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Schwarz Lizards. Sorry, my German's not very good, but name aside, this is a very solid card for the deck to be using because of its interaction with our Tamers and Hybrids. So what this card is doing specifically is it has the main ability where for each Digimon with Hybrid in its traits and Tamer we have in play, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon, adding that extra control type element into the deck, and believe me, we could have lots of Tamers and Hybrids on our field relatively easily to be able to delete a very wide board with this card. And on top of that, it has the nice security ability of activating its main, so that way it's even a threat in our security. And then lastly, onto the Tamers, because you can't run a hybrid-based deck without any Tamers. So I'm going to be running 2 copies of Matt Ishida, just because Matt Ishida is going to be that memory-fixing Tamer, so that way we could always try to hard set our memory to 3 if it's ever less than 3. Then Matt has a really powerful on-play ability that allows us to add 1 purple Digimon or 1 purple option card from our trash back to our hand, so we have multiple different ways on trying to be able to reuse our Digimon and reuse our option cards, making the cards that we do have even more playable just because we have more ways of recycling them. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kari Kamiya. So Kari Kamiya is another very solid Tamer just to be using in general for purple because she has this very powerful ability where during all turns, when a card is removed from your security stack, then you get to suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. So this basically is trying to punish the opponent for trying to attack into your security, and we're not really trying to actively reduce our own security, so most of the time this is going to be triggering on the opponent's turn for them attacking into us. And the more Karis we have on the field, the more powerful this ability becomes because each Kari is basically going to be taxing the opponent for their attack, and that huge shift in memory could de-incentivize the opponent from actually wanting to attack your security, allowing us to buy some extra time to be able to figure out how we want to aggress onto the opponent. So Kari is basically acting like the pseudo ice wall for the deck as a result. And then the last Tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Koichi. So Koichi is one of those hybrid-based Tamers where he actually does have an inheritable ability, his security ability is shoved to the top of the card, and he has a pretty solid on-play ability for literally just playing him. So breaking down all of his abilities, starting with the top half of the card, his security ability, like I said, just allows us to play him for free. All Tamers have this type of ability to be able to play them for free from the security, so this is no different. Then he has a nice on-play ability for when we do play him, where we get to draw 1 card, then discard 1 card. So even he is helping set up our hand and fill up our trash all at the same time, and that's kind of what this deck is trying to do, is utilize this looting type of ability to help us set up. And then his inheritable ability is just a really simple on-delete ability of allowing us to gain 1 memory. So whether this is offensively used or defensively used, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's just the fact that he has a solid generic inheritable ability that just helps us manipulate the memory is pretty decent, because we are trying to delete our Digimon and trying to fill up our trash as quickly as we possibly can and be able to play our cards as efficiently as we possibly can, and Koji is just helping us do all of that. And then because this is purple, and purple is a very high synergy color, there is just a lot of other tech and tools that we could even think about utilizing depending on how you're building your deck and what you want to try to gain out of the deck. So we could use a slew of different on-delete abilities as inheritables to just make deleting our mid to high level Digimon even more worthwhile. So I'm just going to be using Gabumon from BT02 as that token slot, but there's just a lot of different Digimon with inheritable on-deletes that we could utilize. Then we do have some other really solid Digimon that we could play to help with the overall consistency and flow of the deck. So we could play Labramon because it's an on-play loot type of ability. Then we do have Loweemon as a card that just allows us to try to play our Tamers even easier than we do before, because her inheritable ability rewards us with a memory when we play a Tamer. Then we do have various different ways to actually be able to play our Tamers in the form of Neemon. So Neemon actually does have this cute combo with KaiserLeomon or Loweemon, whatever translation they actually go with, and Matt Ishida from BT02, where you could form a pseudo-infinite loop where you could use KaiserLeomon to swing, get himself deleted. Then with Neemon on the field, you can bring back the mat that was underneath him, and then the mat can bring back the KaiserLeomon. And then you could just keep rinsing and repeating as long as Neemon is on that field, and it is a slow infinite, but it is one nonetheless to highlight. Then on top of that, we do have the Loweemon package that we could think about running, just because Cherubimon can actually play Loweemon, and we do have easier ways to be able to play our Loweemons than ever before, thanks to the new Loweemon and the new Loweemon option card. We could even think about playing around with some of the discard synergy a little bit more. So we do have Skullgreymon as a really good level 5 to stop on if we want to just be aggressive with our level 5s. And then on top of that, we are rewarded for actually discarding him by shoving him under a purple Digimon on our field, and he'll give that purple Digimon retaliation with his inheritable ability. Then, as another level 5 to think about, we do have Entelemon to be able to help us play our Tamers, which is pretty decent because, well, that's just what the deck is already all about. And then just to continue on the discard synergy, we even have cards like Orochimon to help us try to draw cards when we're discarding cards, and his inheritable ability isn't necessarily that bad under something like our Cherubimon, so that way when we're actually doing all of that over and over again, we're going to be getting some extra benefit. And then, like I said, we do have the Loweemon package to be playing around with, and Loweemon Chaos Mode is a very powerful level 5 Digimon to be playing around with, just because he's one of the few cards that's actually going to be able to interact with the opponent's Tamers if we need him to, and he's just adding some extra removal into the deck. Then if you want to go full circle with the discard synergy, then we even have Nidhoggmon to just help that discard synergy flow and function if you actually don't want to try to run Cherubimon instead, just because, well, we're already playing lots of draw and discard. And if you want to try to double down on the hybrids and the self-sacrificing nature of what you could lean into the deck, then we even have a card like Ancient Sphinxmon as another decent card to help the deck flow and function, just because he could help replay our hybrids and to try to have a sticky field, on top of the fact that we could use him to try to delete some of our Digimon to try to control the opponent's field. Then we do have some other level 7s outside of Susanomon that we could run. I'm going to be highlighting Omnimon Swart just because, well, it's Omnimon Swart. He's just one of the better level 7s that Purple could be playing around with. Then we do have some more options to help us self-sacrifice and try to gain some additional benefit. So we could use something like Demonic Disaster to try to gain some additional attacks, on top of the fact that it is allowing us to res our level 3 Digimon from our trash as a good security threat as well. Then we also do have Deathclaw as another control type tool that's also helping us sacrifice our own Digimon if that's what we're trying to lean into. Then, like I stated before, we do have the option card that helps us play our Loweemon, so we have more ways to be able to play our Loweemon efficiently. Then we also have win rate 60% because, well, we're in purple. Purple wants to be discarding cards, and win rate 60% is allowing us to discard our cards while reducing the evolution cost of our Digimon, so we could actually play some of them even more efficiently than we normally would. And then just as some other really good purple tamers that you could think about running, we have Mimi if you're trying to go more option heavy and option focus to try to make it so that playing our options is even easier. On top of the fact that she also could tax the opponent's options as well, makes her another really good card to think about. Then we even have Sora and Mimi as just another way to try to help cycle through our deck and set up our trash, just because she allows us to draw a card and discard a card when our purple Digimon's attacking, on top of the fact that if we're able to control the opponent's field and they just don't have a low-level Digimon in play, then we could gain some additional memory. And speaking of gaining some additional memory and leaning into that self-sacrificing strategy, we also do have Matt Ishida from the starter deck to help us synergize with the fact that we want our Digimon to be deleted during our turn for various benefits. So, as I stated before, there's just a lot that this deck can do depending on the different aspects of purple you want to be focusing on. We have looting, which is drawing and discarding. We have self-sacrificing. We have lots of Graze Frez. We have just a lot of things that we can do to just be able to make playing not only our hybrids more efficient, but various other cards as well. And because, again, purple is a very high synergy color, everything just kind of mesh and melds as long as it's built correctly. And I think the way this deck is built, it's a little bit more on the aggressive side, focusing on our low to mid-level Digimon, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because we don't necessarily need to utilize any of our high-level Digimon outside of like Cherubimon, Nidhoggmon, or Tsunomon as some of the better Digimon we could be playing, just because they already have lots of native synergy with what the deck is trying to do, which is utilize our tamers and reuse our tamers and draw and discard a lot, and to be able to set up our trash to do whatever we need it to do. So even though this isn't necessarily going to be the premier purple deck, I still think it's going to be a very solid purple deck that can be played in lots of different ways, making it a very powerful and very versatile deck to use. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.